They believed it was a witch's curse, but the truth was hiding in plain sight. It happened time and time again, and it always began with the same thing: bread. Your brain is filtering reality right now, and under certain conditions, it can get it wrong, separating what's actually out there from what it's generating on its own. In 1692, that system broke down in an entire village. 19 people were hanged, not because of religious fanaticism, not because of mass hysteria, but possibly because of something in the grain. In 1692, 19 people were hanged. One man was crushed under stones. 5 more died in prison. The charges were identical for every single one of them: witchcraft. There was just one problem. There were no witches. What there was something growing in the rye fields, something microscopic, something nobody could see. This is not a story about superstition. This is one of several scientific explanations, but one that fits the symptoms unusually well. This isn't a story of blind faith. That narrative has been around for more than 3 centuries, but it has never fully explained what happened in Salem, because it ignores one thing: the symptoms. Convulsions so violent the body left the ground. Visions of animals that weren't there. The sensation of teeth, invisible teeth, sinking into skin. And one more symptom, almost never mentioned, that changes everything. Salem, Massachusetts, January 1692. A village of about 550 people, cut off from the outside world for months every winter. No supply lines, no medical care worth mentioning. Dependent entirely on what they could grow, and what they grew was rye. Dark bread, dense, the kind that keeps through winter. Every family baked it from the same local grain supply. Every family ate it every single day. The winter of 1691 into 1692 had been unusual, warm, wet, the kind of winter that rots things. A fungus thrives in exactly those conditions. It is called Claviceps purpurea, a fungus documented in agricultural records for centuries. You may know it by a simpler name, ergot. It replaces rye kernel with dark, hard bodies, almost indistinguishable from the grain itself. You would grind it without knowing. You would bake it without knowing. You would feed it to your children without knowing. The rye fields that tested positive for ergot contamination in the 1976 research were located in the western part of Salem Village. The first girls to show symptoms, Betty Paris, Abigail Williams, lived in the western part of Salem Village. Betty Paris, 9 years old. Abigail Williams, 11. The symptoms appeared in January, spread through February. By March, the village was unraveling. Here is the documented symptom list, as recorded by physicians of the time. Violent convulsions of the entire body, visions of animals and spectral figures, temporary blindness, temporary deafness, a burning sensation across the skin, like fire under the surface, the sensation of being bitten by invisible teeth, the feeling of flying, and the symptom almost never mentioned in popular accounts, a crawling sensation beneath the skin, as if something was moving inside them. That symptom has a name in neuroscience: formication. And here's the problem. Every single one of these symptoms has been reproduced in controlled conditions, which means this wasn't imagination. It was chemistry. It is associated with one specific class of neurological event. In 1938, a Swiss chemist named Albert Hofmann was working in his laboratory. He was studying the chemical compounds of ergot fungus. He accidentally absorbed a small amount through his skin, and experienced what he later described as a remarkable restlessness, combined with a slight dizziness and an uninterrupted stream of fantastic pictures. He had just discovered LSD, a compound derived from the same fungus, ergot alkaloids, the same compounds hidden within the Salem rye, target the very same part of the brain that LSD interacts with, the system responsible for anchoring the mind to reality. They bind to the exact same receptor, acting as a chemical key that unlocks a door never meant to be opened. This causes the brain's sensory filtering to fail, flooding the consciousness with unfiltered data. The boundary between internally generated experience and external reality simply dissolves. As the chemical takes hold, the nervous system begins to overwrite the physical world with its own projections. This is more than a hallucination. Your brain is actively constructing a new reality, and it can no longer tell where the biology ends and the world begins. The convulsions, the visions, the flying, the invisible teeth biting into skin, and the formication, the crawling beneath the skin. That last symptom is documented in high-dose psychedelic states. It is caused by the same receptor activation. The Salem girls were not lying. They were not performing. They were experiencing something chemically real. The ergot hypothesis is not without critics. Historians note that not every member of the affected households fell ill, which would be expected from a shared grain supply. Others argue that the social tensions in Salem, land disputes, community fractures, political pressure, are sufficient explanation. They may be right. The grain is gone. The bodies are in the ground. We cannot prove it. But here is what we can prove. Salem was not unique. For 500 years before 1692, a condition spread periodically across medieval Europe. Entire villages at once. Convulsions, hallucinations, burning skin, death. The church called it divine punishment. Physicians called it a mystery. Sufferers called it by the name they could feel, St. Anthony's fire. The cause, identified only in the 19th century, was ergot. It had been in the bread for 5 centuries, and nobody knew. Consider the evidence as it stands. A village sharing a single contaminated grain supply. Symptoms that match ergot poisoning. Every one of them. An outbreak concentrated in the geographic area of the contaminated fields. A warm, wet harvest season. Ideal ergot growth conditions. And one final fact. One detail that makes this theory difficult to ignore. The Salem Witch Trials, the accusations, the convulsions, the visions, began in January 1692. They intensified through February and March. They peaked in the spring, and then they stopped. Abruptly, not gradually, not as the accused were executed. Abruptly. By late spring, the old grain supply was exhausted. The new harvest had not yet come in. The village was eating different food. The symptoms stopped the moment the old grain disappeared. 19 people were executed in Salem. They died for a crime that requires a witch to commit. There were no witches. There was a village whose reality was chemically rewritten, without their knowledge, without their consent, perhaps by nothing more than a microscopic organism hidden in their bread, who genuinely saw what they described, who genuinely felt what they reported, whose brains were producing a reality that led directly to the gallows. Here is the fact almost no documentary mentions. In 2008, the state of Massachusetts officially exonerated the last 5 accused witches of Salem, 316 years after they were condemned. The exoneration was symbolic. It changed nothing for the dead, but the state of Massachusetts, in its formal legal language, still does not specify what caused the Salem Witch Trials. The official record remains open. The brain cannot always recognize when its perception is being altered. It cannot audit itself from the inside. It simply generates a reality. and acts on it. Salem is not an anomaly. It is a pattern. What enters the body shapes what the mind believes. What the mind believes determines what the body does. Salem wasn't an anomaly. It was a case we happened to notice, and what they believed may have been shaped by something in their bodies. This is PoisonTable. Next, a different empire, a different poison. The Roman aristocracy drank it every day for centuries. They called it delicious. It was destroying their frontal lobes, something nobody could see.